It's funny how betrayal often arrives not with a bang, but with a whisper. On a quiet Tuesday morning when you're sipping coffee and the world seems perfectly normal. For me, that whisper was a small leather wallet of vivid crimson that didn't match my husband Julian's minimalist style, that I caught him quickly hiding in his locked desk drawer. It was just a second, a flicker of movement, but it was enough to plant a strange little buzz of anxiety in my chest. I dismissed it. Of course, because you always do, don't you? You tell yourself it's nothing, that you're seeing things, because the alternative, the truth is a world you're not prepared to enter. I didn't know then that this small red object was the first sign that the man I trusted with my entire life had been building another one behind my back. Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments and if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Eleanor, and like many people who build their lives from the ground up, I've always believed that the strongest foundations are made of stone, not sand. I grew up on a small, struggling farm in Idaho, where every dollar was earned through sheer force of will, and every future plan had to be built with your own two hands. I remember the weight of my father's calloused hands, the way he would count every penny from a successful harvest, his brow furrowed with worry until the bills were paid. He taught me that dignity was not something given, but something earned through honesty and hard work. That upbringing taught me that what you build for yourself, brick by brick, no one can ever take away. A lesson that would one day become both my greatest strength and the deepest well of my pain. Julian was a different kind of man entirely. He was born with a silver spoon, gliding through life with an effortless charm that was a stark contrast to my own dogged determination. We met at a professional conference in Denver, where I was a budding landscape architect, and he was there as a favor to his father's real estate firm. He was effortlessly charming, with a quick, easy smile that promised a world without worry. He listened to me talk about my design principles, about how I saw a story in every garden, and for the first time, I felt like someone truly understood the work of my hands and the passion of my heart. He spoke of his family's legacy, of his father's powerful connections, and I, in my small-town naivete, believed I was entering a world of sophistication and stability. I fell hard, believing that his charisma and my grit could build a life together, a partnership of equals where we would each bring our own unique strengths to the table. Our relationship progressed quickly, and soon Julian invited me to meet his parents for dinner. Their sprawling house in the suburbs was a world away from my childhood home, a fortress of old money and quiet expectations. His father, a man with a stern face and an even sterner handshake, spoke only to Julian about business, never once making eye contact with me. His mother, an elegant woman with a voice as sharp as glass, asked me a series of probing questions about my family, my background, and my work. A polite interrogation that made it clear she was searching for the cracks in my foundation. When I mentioned my parents' farm, she simply smiled, a thin, patronizing curl of her lips, and changed the subject. In that moment, I understood that I was not Julian's equal in their eyes, but an interesting project, a curiosity from a different world he had decided to bring home. We moved in together and quickly found a beautiful modern condo in downtown Denver, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto the city skyline. I poured every penny of my savings into that down payment, a significant amount I had accumulated over years of overtime and certifications. I had a clear vision for our future, a tangible map for where we were headed. Julian's contribution was modest, a lump sum from his father's generosity. But he always spoke of our home as if it were his grand design, something he had acquired through his business acumen. I didn't push back, not wanting to rock the boat, choosing instead to focus on my growing career and our seemingly happy life together, ignoring the subtle sting of being treated as a silent partner in my own home. I told myself it was just his way of being proud, of taking ownership. But in my quiet moments, a knot of unease began to form. Then came Celeste, Julian's older sister. She was a self-proclaimed influencer, all designer clothes and curated social media posts that screamed wealth and success. But I quickly learned her lifestyle was a carefully constructed facade. The first time I met her, she showed up unannounced one afternoon, her perfume filling the entryway before her voice did. "So, this is the place," she said, her eyes sweeping over the decor with an air of subtle dismissal. Julian rushed to her side, grinning and puffing out his chest like a peacock. "Looks good, doesn't it?" he said, never once mentioning my months of work on the design or my investment in the furniture. Celeste just nodded, her eyes never meeting mine, and I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It was the first time I truly felt invisible in my own life. Over time, Celeste's visits became more frequent, and each time, she would find a new way to hint at her financial troubles while flattering Julian, building him up in a way that made him feel like a big shot. She would mention a new luxury handbag she couldn't quite afford, or an elaborate trip she had to cancel. And Julian, in his puffed-up glory, would always offer to help. I, on the other hand, was the one who actually had to write the checks. I did it, always with the insistence on promissory notes, a habit from my cautious upbringing, believing they were just temporary loans between family members. It was a strange dance, Julian playing the generous hero, and me, the quiet benefactor, the one who actually provided the means. I felt like a human ATM, a source of endless funds for a life I was not invited to. One afternoon, Celeste called in tears, claiming her car had been towed and she needed thousands to get it out. I immediately sent the money, only to find an hour later on her Instagram story a picture of her in a designer dress, clinking glasses at an expensive rooftop bar with the caption, "Crisis averted, cheers to the best brother in the world." The anger was a slow burn, a fire beneath the surface. My professional life was soaring. I was closing big projects, earning a reputation for meticulous design and client satisfaction. Julian's work, however, seemed to be going nowhere. He would come home late, always with vague excuses about meetings or team dinners, and I would find myself lying awake, watching the city lights flicker outside, a hollow feeling growing in my chest. He started to suggest I work less, that I should focus on building a home life while he handled everything else. But his words felt like a leash, not a partnership. He wanted me to be a housewife, a silent ornament in the home I had paid for. The one thing that gave me a sense of control and stability was my career, the life I had built for myself. I knew I couldn't give that up, no matter how much he insisted. The cracks became fissures, then chasms. $100 dinner charge here, $1,000 luxury watch purchase there, all on our joint account. I would bring it up, my voice calm but my hands shaking. And Julian would just shrug, saying, "It's our money. Eleanor, don't you trust me?" It was the gaslighting I had been waiting for, a final confirmation that he saw me not as a partner, but as a resource to be exploited. I felt like a fool, but not the kind who cries and gives up. I was the kind who gets even. I started my quiet investigation, checking bank statements, listening to his hushed phone calls, and keeping an eye on every little detail I had once dismissed as trivial. I found receipts for purchases in towns he supposedly hadn't been to, dinner tabs for two that he'd claimed were with male colleagues, and even an airline confirmation for a flight to a different city than the one he'd told me he was going to. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place on a cold Tuesday morning when my phone buzzed with a call from my brother, Liam. Unlike Julian, Liam was steady and true, an accountant who lived by numbers and logic. He had always been the one who saw Celeste for what she was, a beautiful disaster who left a trail of financial wreckage in her wake. I remembered a conversation we'd had years ago, where he told me about a time she had maxed out his credit cards to pay for a spontaneous trip, then laughed it off. "She's a taker." "Eleanor," he had warned me then, "don't let her near your wallet." I hadn't listened. "Eleanor." Liam's voice was tight with a frustration I knew all too well. "I just saw a photo of Celeste on social media. She's in Miami, on a yacht, and the reflection on the window? It's a guy who looks exactly like Julian." My world tilted. I told him Julian was on a business trip in Seattle, but even as I said it, the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. "He's not in Seattle," Liam said, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "He's in Miami with Celeste." The rage that followed wasn't loud and wild, but cold and calculating. I went to Julian's study, a room I rarely entered, and began to search. I found a small crimson leather wallet I had seen him hide weeks earlier. Inside, I found not only a wad of cash, but a plane ticket stub to Miami and a receipt for a diamond ring. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about a level of betrayal I couldn't even comprehend. It wasn't a spontaneous fling. It was a meticulously planned secret life. And the ring, a symbol of their shared future, confirmed it all. I called my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sandra, and laid out everything: the promissory notes from Celeste, the bank statements with Julian's extravagant purchases, and the plane ticket. We sat in her office, the cool air conditioning a stark contrast to the burning anger in my chest. As she reviewed the evidence, she listened intently, her face impassive. When I was done, she simply said, "We can make them pay for every single cent, Eleanor. And we're going to get you out of this marriage completely. On your terms." The thought of freedom, of finally reclaiming my life, was the only thing that kept me from breaking down. The day of Julian's supposed business trip, I made my move. He was in a rush, throwing clothes into a suitcase while on the phone with Celeste. "It's all set, babe," he said, a smug grin on his face. "Just gotta make a quick stop at the bank for some more cash. This trip is gonna be epic." As he turned to grab his wallet from the kitchen counter, I discreetly swapped out his bank card for an expired gift card from an old coffee shop, its faded logo barely visible on the corner. It was a risky move, but I had watched him be so careless with my own cards, and I knew he would never think to check. He didn't. He just tucked the card into his wallet, kissed me on the cheek, and walked out the door, his phone already buzzing with a text from Celeste. The first few hours were silent, and then the calls started. First a text. "Brooke, living it up with Daisy and friends. All on your card, you've been getting too cocky, babe. Time you learned your place." His message was filled with a triumphant smugness that made my blood run cold. But I felt nothing but a powerful calm. I waited a few minutes, then texted him back, asking what he was talking about. He laughed, thinking he had the upper hand, but then his voice turned to confusion, then panic. "What the hell?" I heard him fumble with his wallet. "This says Java Hut, Eleanor." "What the hell?" I didn't respond. Just let his desperation hang in the air for a moment. He called again, this time his voice tight with desperation. "This isn't funny. Eleanor, send me money, now we're stranded." I hung up. The sound of his frantic pleading was a symphony of justice. In the days that followed, my phone became a hotline for Julian and Celeste's mounting desperation. They were stranded in Miami with no money. Their credit cards declined, and their hotel demanding payment. Julian's calls were filled with frantic pleading, while Celeste's texts grew more and more unhinged, blaming him for the whole mess. "You said her card was good," she screamed in a voicemail he left by accident. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Liam and I worked in perfect sync. He was the quiet, logical counterpoint to Julian's flash and Celeste's chaos. He had found more emails between Julian and Celeste, discussing a new apartment they were planning to rent in Miami and a joint business venture, all of which they planned to fund with my money. They thought we were just their bank. Liam said one day over coffee, they thought we'd never notice. When Julian and Celeste finally dragged themselves back to Denver, they stormed into the condo, their faces sun-scorched and their eyes blazing with fury. "What the hell?" Eleanor Julian shouted, throwing his suitcase down. "You set us up, Liam's in on it now. This is insane." Celeste stood beside him, her arms crossed, glaring at me like I was a clearance rack dress. I just stood there, holding a folder from my lawyer, calm and collected in my own home. Liam stepped forward, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by a steely resolve that I hadn't seen before. "Sit down, both of you," he said, his voice cutting through their bluster. They froze, shocked by his tone, and sat. Sandra, my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman in a sharp blazer, handed them the papers. Julian's eyes widened as he read the divorce filings and the financial demands. Divorce? He stammered, his face pale. Eleanor, you're joking. Celeste's hands trembled as she clutched her papers, her face paling. This says I owe $40,000. I didn't do anything. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. You borrowed $30,000. Celeste. The rest is for your part in the scheme. We have the promissory notes, the receipts, everything. Julian tried to laugh it off. You can't prove I spent that much. I slid a stack of highlighted bank statements across the table. Dinners, bars, that watch you're wearing, it's all here. Julian, every dollar of my savings you blew. Celeste ripped her papers in half, a smirk on her face. Good luck enforcing that without the originals. I smiled back. Those were copies. The originals are with my lawyer. Nice try. Julian's face turned a deep shade of crimson as he crushed a pen in his hand. You're ruining everything, he shouted. I didn't do anything. I didn't flinch. No, you did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess. The room fell silent, their defiance crumbling. The settlement papers were signed, their faces tight with resentment, agreeing to repay every cent. I moved out of the condo a week later, leaving Julian to deal with the mortgage he once bragged about. I bought a new, beautiful condo in a different part of the city, a place with a view of the mountains I had left behind, a symbol of the life I had rebuilt, paid for with my own money. A few months later, my boss called me into her office and offered me the senior director role I had been working towards for years. The weight of that moment, of all those years of hard work finally paying off, was almost too much to bear. Word of the drama spread, and Julian was quietly transferred to a branch in another city, far enough away to keep him out of my life. He texted me one evening, his words filled with fake remorse. Eleanor, I miss you. Can we try again? You can focus on your career. I swear. I just laughed, deleting the message. Celeste tried her own angle, with a sugary tone. Eleanor, let's be family again. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I cut her off. Celeste, we're done. Goodbye. I blocked them both, their voices fading into nothing. Liam and I stayed in touch, our relationship deeper than ever. He had divorced Celeste too, and together. We found a kind of friendship built on a shared experience and an unspoken understanding of what it means to be truly honest with each other. A few months later, as I drove past my old condo, I saw a for sale sign in the front yard. I didn't care where Julian or Celeste were or how they were scraping by. My life was full new condo, new role, new perspective. I had fought for every inch of it, and I was thriving. My journey wasn't just about outsmarting Julian and Celeste, though that felt good. It was about reclaiming myself, the girl who refused to let a tough start define her. Every dollar they owed, every paper they signed, was a reminder. I was not invisible. I was Eleanor, and I had built a life they could never touch. Julian didn't miss me. He just missed my bank card.